Okay.
All right, so
Well,
it's up to you.
okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Marie-Gabrielle, and everybody for sharing as well. So identifying and helping an employee in distress. So just something that you should know as well is that some of the things that we're going to see in the webinar are things that you know already, some of the things that you're practicing. But what I'd like you to keep in mind is take what you need and leave the rest. And sometimes, as I've noticed in psychology, we learn unconsciously and we register things unconsciously, and they come out when we need them the most. All right, so let's see if I can move the slides. So a brief summary of what we're going to be talking about today is understanding distress, spotting the warning signs, stress management. So I have a number of slides there on stress management, but that's not the focus of the webinar. It's an entire webinar altogether, but I will give you 2-3 things as well so that you can keep in mind. And the communication, what to do with an employee who seems to be in distress. And the last part is going to be offering support. All right, so just a quick question for everybody here, if you can participate in the conversation. Unfortunately, the answer is already on the screen, so I'll go back so that you won't see it. But what do you think about stress? Is stress good or is stress bad? And I can't see your answer, so Marie-Gabrielle, I'll need your help in case there's someone who's typing something.
Yes, okay.
So is stress good or bad?
So Thomas just said depends.
Depends. Okay, perfect.
Depends on the type of the stress. Both are right,
Exactly.
says, yeah.
Okay. So that is absolutely true. So stress in itself is neither good or bad, it's neutral. It's a natural reaction to an environment that is changing, so changes externally, internally. So your body tries to adapt. So just keep in mind, imagine that I have a sponge in my hand. I think we all have good imaginations, I hope. So what happens is when we squeeze a sponge, right, we're putting it under stress. So there's a point where the sponge can hold the stress, and then there's a time when we release, and then the sponge is no longer under stress. And we can see some of the physiological changes that happens when the stress is going on. So again, short-term stress is good for performance, it's good for motivation. It's the reason why you end up sending that email in a very brilliant way, because it's such an important thing and there's a deadline. However, the bad thing about chronic stress, here I'd like to stress the word chronic, is that if there's an accumulation of it, it tends to wear you out. This is when you feel jittery, you have maybe sleep problems, and some of the issues that we're going to go into detail during the webinar. Okay, so the answer is it can be both. All right, so does work cause distress? The World Health Organization says that work is a protective factor. Protective factor in that it gives us a goal, it gives us an aim in life, and at work, sometimes we might realize our capacities, realize that we can do things that we did not think we were capable of doing. So work is good for our health. However, it is the work conditions that can have an effect on our physical and mental health. And talking about psychosocial risk, at EUTELMED, we work on psychosocial risk prevention. And those are issues that touch the psyche, the person, the individual, the social aspect, meaning their work, the situation, the relationships with their colleagues, with their managers. And these are the things that we talk about the most. And so when we talk about psychosocial risk prevention and taking care of your mental health, we notice that occupational stresses have become increasingly mental in the present day, as opposed to in the past when they were just physical. And quality of working life. We see that so many initiatives are put in place to make sure that the quality of life at work is good. But does it mean just putting table football in the cafeteria and fruit baskets? It's a bit more complex. So it's about really taking an interest in prevention, in reducing risk factors that can affect health, and increasing satisfaction at work. So increasing motivation. And with the thing with motivation that I like to say is, It's something that you create. Motivation isn't something you say, now I'm motivated or get motivated. It's creating an entire ambiance that allows people to be motivated and to be committed as well. Right? So giving a sense of meaning and reinforcing a sense of efficiency in the workplace. Okay, so now this really, really pertains to our webinar. So when a colleague shows signs of deep sorrow, it's better not to broach the subject so that it goes away quickly, sweep it under the rug. We shouldn't show our feelings at work. Is this true or false? I need to find a way to make sure that maybe the answers come afterwards, because I think it's right there. But just keep that in mind, even though you're not going to write anything in the chat section. Not addressing a topic with somebody tends to make it a bit more difficult. A good metaphor is the elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the room, and we're all going to pretend that it's not there. And I would like to counter that. It actually takes more energy for us to pretend that there isn't an elephant in the room. It's mental gymnastics as well, and maybe even physical gymnastics, just sidestepping the elephant and pretending that there's nothing there. So it's very important to be able to address issues as they come up, because it's better to address them beforehand and not let a situation, deteriorate before we finally address whatever the employee might be going through. And some examples of stress, some of them are pretty obvious. Maybe you get bad news about a family member or a friend. You're going to notice immediately your signs of stress. Oh, I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling tired. All right. So they're easy to spot. They draw attention. And one thing about these very obvious signs of stress is that they mobilize people to react. Because like I said again, stress is a natural phenomenon. It's a natural thing. In fact, us human beings, we're here today because we have stress. It mobilizes us to act, for example, with adrenaline that's secreted in the body. You start to act, you try to organize. And so there are some stress factors that are very obvious. But the ones that are a bit insidious are the ones that are daily and chronic. And these are the ones that are sometimes trivialized. No, it's nothing, And I think it's interesting here to talk about maybe sometimes different cultures, different ways that we address issues in society. In some cultures, you're always fine. Even if you're clearly having signs of stress, everything is fine. It's trivialized, it's swept under the rug. And for some of these stresses, they go unnoticed, and in French, there's this term, j'ai pété un câble, and usually associated with a before and after. I was fine before, and then afterwards, j'ai pété un câble, meaning I completely lost it. This is a sign, though, that there was an accumulation of some stresses that were going unnoticed. And now for some of them, the impact is minimized, is denied. Sometimes we're in denial, or they're simply ignored. And I think that's also a way of trivializing them, just to know it's not there, But the reality of the fact is that they do have an impact on us, right? So just to give a little spotlight on psychosocial risk, the definition of stress that we do sometimes have is an imbalance between a person's perception of the constraints of their work environment and their perception of their own resources to cope. Sometimes there's an imbalance. Sometimes I think I can cope better than I can in reality. And some of the issues that we see in the workplace, are depression, which is a mental disorder characterized by a loss of interest in one's usual activity. So it could be in the work life, it could be in their personal lives as well. Great sadness, some low self-esteem. And some symptoms of depression are fatigue and difficulties in concentrating. All right, so let's understand more the mechanisms of chronic stress. Now, I've already given you the example of the sponge. So this means that because stress is something that we're confronted with on a, It's a normal thing. It's a normal thing to be confronted with stress. There's a time when we can handle it. When the body and the mind and the hormones, they react to give you a boost of energy, to, make you aware of something that might be dangerous. It's normal. All right. There's a little alarm, and then you resist, because we all have different tolerance levels of stress. And by the way, they're not just based on the individual, they're based also on, life events, for example. Am I having a very hectic private life or work life? Do I feel a bit more stressed, or are my resources stretched more than usual? Maybe I just welcomed a baby. No? So there's a moment when there's resistance, and that's great. Between resistance and fatigue, so it's written in French, résistance, épuisement, épuisement meaning fatigue. There's this stage in the middle, just like the sponge. At least the stressor, the outside stressor, has to stop. And then eventually the body goes back to normal, goes back to its normal hormonal levels. So it takes time. This is why stress is a normal thing. Having symptoms of stress is a normal thing. But if there's continuous compression, continuous pressure, this is when we get to a point of exhaustion, because now the body can't regulate. It's done its best. The adrenaline is there. The cortisol keeps on going up, and cortisol is a stress hormone. We have cortisol all the time, but it's the levels of cortisol that change. And then the body that's helping you cope with the situation can't do it anymore. And some of the work stresses that we see, it's increasing pressure, constant changes, frustrations, and difficult relationships. Sometimes we talk about violence at work, moral and sexual harassment. I've noticed the past couple of years, we've had lots of interventions where we raise awareness about these issues, and just issues about having a distressing work environment. So like I mentioned at the beginning, occupational stresses have become decreasingly physical and increasingly psychological. And they have an impact on the individual person. They have an impact on the company. They have an impact on the colleagues and the managers as well. But before we get to the impact, this is a very important slide, in that we need to be able to see the signs and signals of distress. All right. So generally, we say that a change in behavior that lasts for more than 3 to 4 weeks should grab our attention. Why? Because like I mentioned, there's a window period where we can be stressed. It's normal. There's pressure. There's a change. I need to adapt. Any situation that demands you to adapt causes some sort of stressor, or some sort of stress. But the emotional signs that last for more than 3 or 4 weeks, like irritation, that's a very big one. I'm impatient. I have this feeling of constantly running behind the clock. So I'm irritable, tears in the eyes, sometimes lack of eye contact, the tone of voice. And with the tone of voice, I like to signal this a lot, because now so many of us work remotely. Sometimes we have a meeting, we might not see the person, maybe there's technical issues, the camera can't work, but it's the tone of voice that tells us as well how the person truly is feeling. The cognitive signs, difficulty concentrating. Maybe you ask the person a question about a conversation you had yesterday. They can't remember, so memory problems. And this feeling of being slowed down, of just slowing down. And so those are the cognitive signs. And the behavioral signs could be isolation. I talked about, the stress events that are very obvious. These ones mobilize people. There's a feeling of solidarity. But with the chronic and invisible stress symptoms, people tend to isolate. People isolate for different reasons. Maybe feelings of shame, feelings of, I have to hide the fact that I don't quite know, or that I'm having problems with concentration, right? So disinterest during meetings. They're not as invested as before. They used to talk, they used to participate, and then there's conflict. And I like to link emotional and behavioral signs in the fact that sometimes when you're irritated and you're very impatient, this tends to lead to conflicts because, remember, psychosocial, we're not working on islands, we work with people. So the social aspect will sneak in there and we'll start to see, conflicts in communication. And there's making mistakes, there's the physical signs as well, the fatigue, the headaches, the back pains. So again, there's a window period where the body is trying to help you cope with the difficult situation. But beyond that, it's important to know that maybe there's something going on. And now I just want to talk a bit about burnout. So there's three main dimensions of burnout, right? So there's physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, mental exhaustion. All right. And also there's this feeling of not being able to engage properly with work. So burnout mostly happens to people who have a lot of resources. It sounds paradoxical because some people might link burnout with weakness. Actually, we get into a situation of burnout because we have a lot of resources and we're very engaged in our work or engaged with the people around us that we don't realize that we're getting used up in terms of resources. So this is when sometimes someone might say, well, I just couldn't wake up today. But there were signs and symptoms, right? Maybe they went unnoticed or maybe they were trivialized, right? So the consequences on an employee: withdrawal, feeling incompetent. Even though the person is competent, these feelings, they come up and therefore they feel they're not able to do their job properly. Right, so we put beyond 15 days, but keep in mind it's really mostly 3 to 4 weeks, right? Those are the consequences of work stresses on employees. The consequences on performance: demotivation. So the environment now has made it not feasible to maintain a certain level of motivation. So difficulties concentrating, slowness in task performance. So that might impact the individual, but if we work in a team, that might impact the progress of a project, for example, then doubts and hesitations. They second guess themselves. So I'll just give an example. An email that usually takes them 5 or 10 minutes to write and just reply, now it takes them more time. It takes maybe an hour and a half. And even then, when they send it, they still have doubts, So imagine that in terms of the time and energy that it takes, it's a lot. And it's not sustainable on a long-term basis. It's not sustainable. And then as well, we see, the personal consequences, maybe difficulties in investing in their relationships, maybe because they're tired as well, or maybe they're second guessing themselves. So they have a hard time with their personal lives as well. And the work-life balance gets thrown off, This is the vicious circle in that I'm having a hard time investing or doing my task. Then I'm going to try and dedicate even more time and energy and trying to concentrate on it, right? So it's taking me more time. And at the end, I come out dissatisfied, And then I'm going to think about it, even when I do go home, because I'm so dissatisfied. So I'm not present for my friends, for my family. And sometimes I'm not present for myself as well. Right. So those are some of the issues that we can see. Please feel free to ask questions as well. We can keep it as interactive as possible. I'm keeping my eye on the time. Okay, it's 11:23. All right. So I just wanted to highlight some of the issues that are faced as well by expats. So I can imagine there are a couple of people joining us here who are expats. So difficulties faced by an expat population is mainly related to personal matters in the beginning rather than professional ones. It means that for an expatriation to be a success, the employee and his or her family must be taken care of prior, especially prior, to anticipate as much as possible what could be expected. What are the things that they can look out for? And we have it in French here. But some of the difficulties might be when someone travels alone and they leave their family behind. Sometimes it's the language barrier, cultural barrier even, because we need to, even before the expatriation, we need to try and cultivate, our the emotional and cultural intelligence about the place where we're going. So really, it's work for the individual who's going away from their home, and the company as well, to accompany them as much as possible. And so we see sometimes people who get isolated, who have maybe issues integrating. So again, anticipate as much as possible. I like to say as much as possible because we can't control everything. All right. So we can also expect phases of cultural shock. For some people, it's not immediately that. For some people, there's the honeymoon phase. Oh, you're discovering, if you're moving from a very cold climate and you're moving to a hot climate, you're just happy to see the sun. So there's the honeymoon phase. And then bit by bit, some things come into play that are a bit more complicated than you expected. So you get to the negotiation phase, and then you get to the adaptation phase. So just picture it as a curve. A lot of things are a curve. So you get there, you're learning, you're interacting with the new colleagues, and you're getting help from the company. You realize that, oh, maybe my manner of communicating isn't as good as I expected. So these are all things to keep in mind, all right? So the vulnerability factors. Was it a choice or constraint? Family situation, with or without the family? Or maybe someone who's single, all right? The health of the couple and the family, it has an impact. So as much as the single person, the employee, is also having to adapt, the family members also have to adapt. So that might, at some point, make it possible that they have conflicts. Is this the first time someone is moving or not? So experience, is it new? Do I have it? Do I have the tools that I usually use when I change countries and languages and cultures? All right. So it's important to try as much as possible to have support networks. Cultural activities, and those are a way to learn quickly about a country. Because what tends to happen sometimes when we're expats is you move to a country, you find other expats, maybe from the same country, or people who are just expats in general, because we have something in common, and then we tend to stay in that bubble. And then we don't eventually learn as much as we can about the country where we're living, and the people, the local people that we work with. And that's good for communication, because you can understand that, oh, so this hand gesture means this, or this movement means that. And it's important to immerse yourself as much as possible. And this removes as well the feelings of isolation that can come in, and feelings of being in exile. So again, here is the impact that it might have on your work, on your family situation. And these are things to keep in mind, especially because people joining us in here today, they manage teams. And see as well, like what we mentioned, are there changes in behavior? Did this person come and they were in the honeymoon phase, and now the honeymoon phase is coming to an end? What tools and resources can we give them to help them cope? Like I mentioned, the object of the webinar is not the webinar on stress management, but I just thought I'd give a few tips and tools that we use to, as much as possible, help people understand and manage their stress. So I don't know where you're sitting right now. You're in an office, I just want everybody to just stretch out your hands as far away from your body as possible. And this is the thing, I can't see you, but I hope you're doing the actions as well. There you go. So these are what we call the circles of influence. Out here are things that we cannot control. We can't even predict them. They come. And this is where they are. And when we fold our hands a little bit, this is the zone that we call the sphere of influence. It means I can't directly control it, but I have some sort of influence on the outcome. And the things that are concretely within our control are here. Our mind, our bodies, our reactions. And this is a very useful tool, especially in times of constant change, in times of adaptability, where we don't have all the cards. And I link the circles of influence with two main skills as well. Again, it's good skills are things that we can learn. Resilience is a skill. Knowing what I can do, what I can't do, how I can practice, it's a very good skill. Right, so the definition of resilience that we have, we'll send you the slides, I think, afterwards as well, is the ability to withstand adverse events and stressful situations without falling apart by actively and positively coping with the stress. All right, so I need to adjust to a reality, you know. Does the employee have to adjust to a new reality, to a change in country, language, or a change in post? What was their plan A, plan B, plan C? All right, they need to adjust. And there's this feeling of being buoyant as well. So when we are carrying a load, too much stress with us, it affects our ability to float. Floating meaning, okay, right now, maybe I can't kick my feet, or maybe I'm too tired to kick my feet. Maybe all I need to do is just float and try and gather my strength, right? And rebounding as well, with the ball bouncing. Sometimes we need to just accumulate enough energy to bounce back. And that's what resilience is. And there's mental resilience, you know, identifying your strengths and your weaknesses, working on your weaknesses, but also putting value on your strengths. We tend to just look at the weaknesses, but no, you know, we have risk factors with protective factors. What are the protective factors that are working in the workplace? Do we have maybe good communication? Those are things that we should also keep in mind and maintain. And then look at the risk factors, right? So practicing mindfulness, breathing, monitoring our thoughts. I skipped the slide on automatic thoughts, but these are important as well. What are my thoughts saying? Are they real? Right. So this is something that you can also keep in mind when you're exploring with an employee. What are their thoughts saying? Are they unnecessarily hard on them? Right. And the emotions goes back to the slide where we asked, okay, so if an employee is having difficulties, do we just pretend that nothing is happening? The thing is, we have emotions, whether we like it or not. Even right now, we feel emotions. There is place. We're human beings. We're social and emotional beings. Right? So to keep up with our emotional resilience is to try and embrace your emotions, you know, see them coming through and don't judge them. I'm sorry. Share positive news as much as possible, help others. And as well for situations of expatriation, this is a good thing to be able to try and get involved in the local scene, trying to help others, you know, helping other people. It's not purely altruistic. It's also a way of reminding yourself that you've got qualities and things to give. And there's also practicing physical exercise. Physical exercise has been scientifically proven to help the body cope with stress, with depression, because it really gives a boost to all those feel-good hormones. Remember, the stress hormone cortisol, the only way to get it down in many cases is to actually practice sports. So again, get enough sleep, eat healthy. And the next tool I wanted to share, so we've just seen resilience, is letting go. Resilience as well is letting go. Why? Because I'm not able to control it. And nothing really takes away as much time and energy as focusing on something that we cannot change, right? So letting go is about consciously identifying those habits, sometimes about writing down. So even when we do have an employee who's talking to us, let's make a note of maybe are there habits that they get into that don't allow them to be able to let go and to rest easy? What are the values that they have? This is not a value per se, but an example is some cultures that we have where you are fine no matter what. But is it true? Maybe you do need time to sit down and maybe talk to somebody and find out how you're doing. So this is something that we can keep in mind as well when we have somebody in front of us who isn't feeling very well. All right. So letting go allows us to open our minds, allows us to work on ourselves, allows us to free ourselves as well from some of the habits and values that hold us back, right? And allows us to have this feeling of going forward. All right, so just one last part on some of these tools and skills. Like I said, this is a great webinar as well, all on its own. So letting go is not synonym to giving up. It's quite the opposite. It's being strategic about the actions and intentions that you can have, things that you can influence and control, and choosing the time and energy that you devote to them. Time and energy are not resources that are infinite. We need, especially in times of constant change and pressure, we need to know where to dedicate our energy because we can't handle everything at the same time. All right. I don't think maybe are there any questions? No? Okay. So what to do? Let's say we have somebody who is not feeling very well, and we've seen the signs and symptoms that we mentioned. It's about communication, understanding, and follow-up. Understanding is just knowing just generally, people need to feel heard. They need to feel heard. They need to feel understood. They need to feel guided. And they also need to feel encouraged as well, right? So those are the 4 things that it's just understanding the need. What is the need, right? Before even we think about giving solutions, so we're very solution oriented. Here's a problem. This is what's going on. And our first reaction sometimes is, oh, here's the solution. Sometimes it's taking time to hear and understand what the person is going through before maybe we even give concrete constructions. So during the interview, make sure as well that the timing and the place is optimal for an exchange with the employee. Maybe Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. is not the best time. People are tired, people want to go home, it's just before the weekend, and even we're not as available as we want to be sometimes. It happens, that's life. So choose the right time, maybe choose the right setting, prepare everything, and maybe close the door, just tiny things like that. We might not keep them in mind, but create a secure place for the person to be able to talk to you, right? So express your concern. Right. Mention signs of changes that you've seen. So this is the concrete part as well. It's not a hypothetical. It's, I have noticed that for the past maybe 2 weeks, this is what has been happening. And make sure you have open questions. It's not a yes, no, it's open. And allow them the space and the time to express themselves. This is why when we want to talk to somebody who we suspect isn't doing so well, having the meeting with the person between 2 meetings and just giving them 5 minutes is not enough. They'll tell from the body language that you're not quite there. You're looking at the time or you're fidgeting. Prepare adequate time as well to allow them to express themselves, all right? And understand the needs and the emotions that they're relaying, and allow yourself to have empathy for the person. All right, so with the communication, it's about active listening. Understand their body language. Understand your body language. What is your body language saying, right? And maybe don't interrupt them, and try and look them in the eye. Not glare at them, but occasionally look them in the eye. And try in the moment, to not judge, receive. At that moment, it's not about judging, and sometimes it's not even about giving solutions immediately. It's about receiving and allowing them to feel heard and seen. So in Zimbabwe and in South Africa, one way we say bonjour, hello, is sawubona, meaning I see you, I hear you. And people need sawubona. People need to feel that we're completely engaged. So make sure the timing is good. Make sure the space is okay. Even if it's online, try and make sure that, there won't be any interferences. Maybe tell them, oh, we have some time, so, please feel comfortable. Right. And understanding emotions. We need to understand them before even we need to understand our own emotions. How am I feeling? Am I excited? Am I happy? What's going on? And we need to cultivate our emotional intelligence. Right. So what's great about all the things that we're seeing in this webinar today, these are skills. These are skills that I think the people joining us have or might want to work on, but it's something that we can all learn. All right. So it's the ability to understand and manage your emotions. So self-reflection is important. Self-regulation is important. Self-regulation, why? Being able to not jump in and interrupt and judge. It's about, okay, let me take some time. Let me think what's going on. How do I feel about what's going on? What is the best way to communicate what I see, right? And empathy as well. So empathy is very important. One person once told me that empathy is, yes, it's for the other person, but empathy allows us as well to be able to function, to feel connected. Because if you're going to help somebody, if you don't quite feel connected and understanding about how they are, maybe we won't be able to make the best decisions. All right, so there's thought empathy, feeling empathy, empathetic concern. And stop me if I'm going quickly because I'm looking at the time. All right, so this is a little video. Please let me know if you can hear it. This is a video that one of my colleagues we found. It's on empathy versus sympathy. So please let me know if you can hear it.
No, we can't hear anything.
Oh. Yes, I'm sorry about that. I think there's some perimeters that I should allow so that you can hear the video. But I think we'll be able to send the slides, Marie-Gabrielle, so you'll be able to watch the video and listen to it. Okay.
Yes, we will send a replay and we can put the slides in it so that people can watch after.
Oh, okay,
and
perfect.
Just as it is a YouTube video, you can share the link in the comments.
Okay.
In the chat.
Okay.
If you can.
I'll do that. So basically, I think I can send it afterwards because I don't know if I'll be able to find the link right now. But we won't be able to watch it all at the same time, I think, but it's okay. So the resume of it is basically an employee dealing with a difficult case and is not meeting deadlines, seems a bit stressed. And the person is feeling ineffective. So an indifferent reply would be, how are you dealing with the case? So I feel ineffective. And the reply that we give, how are you dealing with the case, is a bit indifferent. Why? Because this person has just talked about their emotions. They are feeling ineffective, right? And sometimes we try to be sympathetic, right? Don't worry, it's okay, you'll be fine. The thing is, that's a way of trivializing and minimizing this emotional state that the person is in. Sometimes we might go the other route. You're right, it's horrible with this crazy year. You're really struggling. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. So sometimes we think that this is a way of being empathetic with the person, but in reality, it's really shining a spotlight and making them feel even more alone, right? The most empathetic and helpful. So empathy, helpful response is you seem to struggle with meeting deadlines. I hear you say you feel ineffective. Again, sometimes it's formulating what the person just said to you. You know, you feel ineffective. Maybe you feel stressed. It's only natural. Okay, the current situation is destabilizing. Again, it's bringing into context the reality of the situation. It can be a bit destabilizing. It's natural that we're in this window period where we're trying to adapt. Okay, and then we're asking, can you tell me how you are coping? What are the tools and resources that you're currently using? I'd like to understand and see if I can support in any way. So you see, there's stages. There's acknowledging the emotion that's there in front of you, letting the person know that they're not alone. It's not just their struggle. It's not just internally. Because remember, habits and values, sometimes some people tend to be extremely, extremely hard on themselves, especially those who are engaged and committed. Extremely hard on themselves. Maybe it's good to exteriorize it and bring back the current situation and find out what concretely have you been able to do, and see if maybe I, from the outside, can give you a bit more insight and maybe help you with some tools. Okay. So, all right. Again, we're continuing with the same case study. Right. So the person expresses their emotions directly. Right. The attitude. All right. It's basically a resume of what I just said. Right. So it's important to know as well what's being said directly, what's being said indirectly. As human beings, we observe, consciously and unconsciously, we're learning, we're gathering information, right? What does the body language say? This is especially important in those people who are always fine, even when we can see clearly there's something going on. Oh, no, I'm fine. The intonation of the voice, what's going on with the eyes, what are they communicating? All right. All right. The person doesn't say anything, but the context suggests that they're likely to be feeling something uncomfortable. I imagine you must be. Ask. Our attitude, open, the way we communicate, open, leave room for expression as much as possible. All right. So the support you can offer, can we talk about the issues? Can we use empathy? And empathy is a two-way street for connection and understanding. It actually lowers, our hormone levels and blood pressure and heart rate and makes us feel better. This is why empathy isn't just for the other person, for us as well, because we are social beings. We need to feel connected and understood and understanding the other person as well. But one thing I want to advise is to know the limits of the support that we can offer. It's not going to be healthy to stay for 5 hours talking about the situation, going over it again. It's important to know when to pass the baton, to know the relays that you have. Okay, this is what we've explored. I might need to refer you to some, maybe HR. I might need to refer you maybe to the, occupational doctor or to a psychologist. Is that okay? All right. And then do a follow-up. It's not enough to support and help and then send off into nature. It's good to check up feedback. Okay, it can be something that can be done even in advance. Okay, so this is what we've discussed. This is what we've seen. Maybe we can set up an appointment for next week or in 2 weeks to find out how you're doing, So it could be a follow-up in a very formal way, in that way, or it could be an informal follow-up. Oh, so we had a meeting last week. How are you doing? So it's important as well. But, I don't have a slide on this, but again, it's important to understand that we need sometimes healthcare professionals, especially in situations of very chronic stress, because, the talking and maybe the suggestion and the tools that we have might have limitations. All right. So that is our presentation today. I think we're good on the time. I think so. Yes, perfect.
Patricia, thank you very much. It's a very good transition. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting, and it's a pleasure to listen to you, I must say, personally. I present myself quickly to everyone. I'm Thomas from EUTELMED. I'm working with Patricia. She's a psychologist, as you may have noticed. I'm business engineer, so I'm more in charge of our partnership with PREVINTER. And it's on purpose. Patricia mentioned that sometimes you need to pass on to a professional if you identify someone in distress and you have some limits in support them. And it is exactly the purpose of a program put in place by PREVINTER to all its expatriate members, which is called Caring by EUTELMED. So you may have heard of it, and I would like just to remind the program to you very quickly, so you have it in mind for yourself as human being person, but also for your collaborators. So if you identify someone in distress, you can refer them to Caring by EUTELMED, and it's a very good program. Let me just share very briefly my screen, and then we will have some 5 minutes to discuss and to your question maybe. There it is. So you see my screen. So now, thanks to our partnership with PREVINTER, PREVINTER puts at your disposal for all your expatriates the Caring by EUTELMED program. What is the Caring by EUTELMED program? It's a prevention and support program for the psychosocial risk. It's a pathway which has been designed by expert psychologists to provide tools to prevent and support any topics related to the mental health. So from the self-assessment to the in-depth support with different steps and different tools. And these tools are designed to provide solutions to every level of prevention, the primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. I don't know if you are aware of this level of prevention, but it is a very complete program from the self-assessment to the care. To who it is designed? It is designed basically to all employees as human beings for both personal and professional topics. It is very important. We don't make any selection. So it can be personal, professional, related to the expatriation, related to personal matters. The members will find some solution to have advice, have a listening, and also have support for these matters. But it has also been designed to support person who has a very important role within the company for the performance and the well-being. These persons are, of course, everyone who has a preventive role within this mission, such as the HR, the occupational health services, the staff representative, and of course, the managers. So the managers and the HR and the occupational health services will find in the program some support for their mission of prevention and management. This is very important to hear from it. You have, as you can see, I will quite very briefly because I see that I would like to have some time to have a discussion and maybe to let Patricia answer to your question. A brief reminder of the different area you have access to. It is unlimited and it is free of charge. So feel free to invite your collaborators to visit the platform, to visit it yourself, and to refer to the platform should you identify some needs. So you have a self-assessment area with several questionnaires, which will help the expatriate to assess objectively his level of well-being regarding specific theme of the well-being, such as the stress, the sleep, the addiction, etc. You have an awareness area, which is basically a blog with replays of webinars, such as the one you have just seen with Patricia, but you have also article, guide, video, and infographics talking about professional well-being, well-being at work, personal well-being, management or HR topics, expatriation. We have some content dedicated to the expatriation, so it's very useful. Then you also have an e-learning area with several modules which will provide training to your expatriates to reinforce their ability to manage their well-being and be the actor of their well-being with very short module between 10 and 15 minutes, enjoyable, interactive, and very powerful to reinforce and empower them to be in charge of their own well-being, and then support in itself with a 24/7 listening area. So your expatriate can call a psychologist 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, unlimitedly in 6 languages, French, English, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Mandarin. So they can talk to someone at any time they need to discuss a specific topic, professional, personal, to have a benevolence hearing should they need to talk to someone, but also to get some support and advice if they are confronted with a situation. If you are HR and you identify someone in distress, and even after this webinar, you don't know how to help the person, you can call the care line and get some advice on how to accompany this person and how to discuss the problem with the person. If you are an expatriate and you have some issue or some stress about a meeting, you can call the care line to have some support and advice on how to manage your stress to prepare the meeting peacefully. So you see, it's a very day-to-day support basis. But should your expatriate need in-depth support and follow-up, they have access to the appointment or the consultation area. And here they have access to our network of psychologists. We cover more than 60 languages and culture, 60, not 16, 60 languages and culture, and they can have an appointment with a psychologist in their own languages and culture, and several appointments, so they can get some real in-depth support and follow-up for any matters and any issue possible. Thank you for your attention. So we have some time yet. Everything is accessible, I forgot to mention, through the members area of PREVINTER.